So I believe in signs and wonders, and I believe it not just because the Bible says
Mm-hmm.
it, and Jesus told us greater works will we do, but I've seen it as well. Like, so for my daughter, there's been 2 notable miracles, especially when she was a child, that happened in my own life. My mother-in-law as well healed from cancer.
Tell them about that. That's
Yeah.
really
So I'll
powerful.
share one of the stories, not to belabor it too much. When my daughter was first born out here in the desert at Desert Regional Hospital, the day they were going to send her home, she was having a lot of vital signs that were having issues. They didn't know what was going on. So they ended up doing what they call like sort of they take a sample of the fluid that's in your brain and then your spinal column. And what they'll do is they'll take that fluid because her vitals weren't making any sense. And they'll take that fluid and they'll test it to see what's going on. What they found what they call spinal meningitis, which is basically, it would have been forms of retardation, to be honest with you. And God, so I remember when my daughter was in the hospital, the day we're supposed to go home, like 2 days after she's born, they ended up taking her up to what they call NICU, Neonatal Intensive Care Unit. And my daughter's there for about 10 days. And if you want to scare yourself, just have a child and then Google, spinal meningitis, right? and like,
Google.
Yeah. And so, like, rightfully so, me and my wife were just very concerned because all the symptoms of it being she wouldn't develop correctly and nothing. There are people out there that are blessed that have that still, and I'm not here to be dismissive of that. Okay, so but I remember me and my wife began to pray, and in fact we had our church pray as well. And I remember probably around the 8th or 9th day, really the church was on like Wednesday night, a bunch of us came together and there's a big prayer time about it because we were staying at the hospital and we began to believe God for a miracle. And specifically my wife began to believe, like, whose report will you believe? And there's a song that says, we'll believe God's report, not the report of man. And so we began to believe God for a different report. And so we really began to pray and we began to believe for a miracle. What ended up happening is it was on a Thursday or Friday. And when my wife first walks in, she walks up to like one of the nurses to see my daughter. She's in a thing, whatever. And the nurse says, you need to talk to the doctor. And so my wife's like, uh-oh, maybe something worse than what we thought. Worse than spinal meningitis. Because they'd been doing tests every day, and the tests had always been coming back as spinal meningitis. They grow the fluid, and they can tell what it is. And she goes to the doctor, and the doctor's first words to her, he goes, I'm so sorry. And my wife's thinking, oh, she's in a panic. She starts to cry. And he goes, I have no explanation for this. But he said, as of yesterday, the tests came back, and what we thought was there somehow is not there.
Wow.
And so, like, literally within, I think by that Saturday, 2-3 days later, my daughter gets taken home from neonatal intensive care. Undeniably, God did a miracle.
Wow.
Medical science wasn't wrong. What they saw, they saw. But what happened was God did a miracle. And so for us, it was a profound, undeniable, verifiable, not emotionalism, not like I've seen people like, I have a headache and it's gone. No.
Yeah.
This had medical evidence showing, and my wife actually worked at the hospital as a respiratory therapist and knows many of the nurses and many of the doctors that were there. It was undeniably a miracle.
Wow.
And so we seen that in our daughter's life. And then another miracle happened when she was 1, but that was an absolute, because there's people out there they're in Christianity that are like what they call cessationists. They don't believe God does that anymore. And it could be easy to buy into what they say, to be honest with you, because there's some really great theologians that believe that until, not just that I've seen it in somebody else, because I went to Columbia and watched like 900 people get miracles. I watched wheelchairs go out the door and devils get cast out, and that's other people. But it takes it to a whole new level when it happens for you.
When it hits home.
When it hits home, when it's your daughter, when it's your faith, when it's like Jesus doing it, like it takes a whole. So I absolutely believe that God does do miracles, and I think it's really. I don't always have an explanation because I'm not going to act. One thing I would say in the context of miracles is that God does do miracles, and then sometimes He doesn't. Like, right, I'm just straight up. Even Paul said he would pray for people who had miracles, and then Paul's like, I have this thorn in the flesh, and it doesn't go away.
Exactly.
So there are some people that God chooses in His sovereignty to not heal, and that doesn't make them any less or any different. God still loves them. But I do believe in miracles, and I've seen them too.
Yes.
Here in the Coachella Valley. Like, it's not some far-off thing that only happens in
Amen.
foreign countries. It happens here.
Wow. That's powerful. Thank you for sharing that, Pastor.
Yeah. So obviously we've seen it. Now, I will say, once again, never, like me and Pastor Mark talked about a moment ago, there was a bunch of people who came to Jesus in the Gospels, and they asked for miracles, and Jesus told them, a wicked generation seeks a miracle. You don't desire the miracles. You don't seek and worship the miracles. Rather, you desire the God of the miracles, and these signs follow them that believe in Mark 16. So